Hey, everybody, welcome back to the ChatGTM podcast. It's Michael Beck and Chad Horn coming to you live from, I don't know, somewhere in Boston, somewhere in Tampa, Florida. And Chad, good afternoon. How are you today, my friend?
Pretty good. Still enjoying this somewhat calm before the storm. The storm being all the events coming up on the horizon. It's good. Feels like we're getting stuff done these days.
It feels like TSA got cut some checks and we're not going to be standing in line for 6 hours when we finally do get to the airport.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm totally good with that. We literally decided to pass on the quadrifecta shows that's in Vegas this time of year, which was the Pizza Expo, the Bar and Restaurant, the Multi-Unit, and Shop Talk, because that noise just sounded too messy for us. And we stayed home and did some work, so it's okay. Well, let's get on. We got a really awesome guest that's with us today with probably one of the hottest brands in the country, and I don't say that as a play on words, but it is hot, it is tingly. It will make your belly feel happy and good. And you'll think of a ridiculous chicken logo when it comes to mind. I almost thought pops up like a thought bubble. Chad and I were just at the Coco Robotics launch a couple of weeks ago in Venice Beach, California, and this brand was also prominently represented there. Dave's Hot Chicken. Prominently. In fact, they had a food truck that rolled in there that was the talk of the whole event, and that's just badass. So I'm going to do a quick read in because this guest deserves one. So today's episode is about what it looks like when a brand actually has a point of view. And I think they got the right guy for this. And there are very few marketers who've shaped that more than Mr. Brandon Rhoten, arguably one of the defining brand builders of this era. I'm laying it on thick for him because he's amazing. He's now the CMO of Dave's Hot Chicken, one of the fastest growing brands in the country. Before that, he helped create the voice behind Wendy's. Right, this is the whole meme thing that went on that turned Twitter into a weapon, and we get into why most brands get authenticity wrong, why trying to be funny usually fails, and how Dave's is building a brand that earns attention instead of chasing it. Brandon, thank you for who you are, what you mean to our industry, and welcome to the show. Now we'll talk to you.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Thanks for the very glowing intro too. I appreciate that.
Of course. You know, I always loved what you did in the marketplace when I saw the trolliness of the Wendy's stuff going on. And I'm like, that is so smart. That is so smart. I don't want to go too far back in the Wayback Machine here, but how did you come up with something as insane as we're going to talk smack?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think setting a minute of context is probably worthwhile.
Yeah, please.
You know, this is early 2010s before most brands were, I would say, super serious about social, right? Most folks were still committed heavily to traditional channels. Wendy's was too when I joined. 90+% of the budget was going towards the traditional media channels. And there were a few breakouts. Some folks that were starting to get some attention, like Dell, believe it or not. A handful of tech companies really were getting some attention in social. And really, when I came in, I was part of a team of people that were asked to come in and sort of reset the brand because it had been on year like 10 or 11 of traffic decline. A new CEO came in. His big mandate was how do we kind of rekindle this thing and get people talking about Wendy's again in the context of Five Guys and Chipotle and 100 other fast casuals basically stealing the spotlight from most fast food. So really the work we did was, and I'm a big believer in sort of going back to your foundations is what is the positioning of the brand? And we really looked back to the early 80s when Dave was all about challenging the industry to be better. And, everybody knows Where's the Beef, right? From back in the day. The first time a brand actually called out other brands on television and in like a public medium.
It was kind of in their DNA already.
Yeah, it was. And it became kind of a culture phenomenon that, you're willing to call out others because they're not doing the things that you think are right for your industry. So when we started down the path of how do we rework this and rekindle the love for the brand, we kept coming back to that, this idea that we can still be this, we just probably can't be it in the way that, 100 other brands have done since the 80s. So let's figure out how to do this in a way that is resonant for the 2010s. That led to us doing a bunch of experimentation. Kind of Twitter was the quickest way to banter back and forth. That led to hiring, a comedian that's what he did. He was a roast comic and his job was to, on stage to roast people, and sort of took off from there. So it really did start with a strategic foundation of this is what the brand should be. This is the positioning that differentiates, and just do it in a modern way. And it really worked. People paid attention, and we did a lot of other things. So it wasn't just that helped get the brand on the right track for, 10, 12 years of traffic growth. But it certainly was a milestone that people paid attention to and made my team, who now is CMOs and all over the place, very successful. So very proud of that work. Very proud of that team.
I love that you mentioned your team. It wasn't I.
No, I don't,
That
man,
says
we
a lot
don't.
about you.
I think marketing leaders, once you become a leader, it's your job to hire great people and show them the path, and the rest is up to them. And if you got good people, it works out every time.
Love it. Chad?
A really good segue to now what you're doing at Dave's, because I'm sure there's a similar parallels. What have you harnessed of the original Dave's brand that you're now refreshing in a new marketing strategy?
Yeah, so I spend my first few months at every brand trying to figure out, like, again, like Wendy's, what are the fundamentals that actually drive traffic, that get attention, that do the things that marketers are supposed to do, which is get people's attention and get them to show up. And we did our homework on what were those things for the last year and a half or 2 years, and quickly found that the tone of the brand, which really we don't speak a lot, where we more echo what people say to us, is working. That's a great point of view and a great positioning to have of sort of we're reflecting what our fans are saying to us. The saying I use internally a lot is you never say you're funny, you just tell a joke. And that's kind of what we try to be, is you don't ever say what you are, you just do the thing, and people will either it'll resonate with them or it won't. And we really found in the research was what's driving behavior for our brand right now is people want to see the kind of DNA of Dave's, like the spices and the levels of heat expressed in ways that aren't just a chicken sandwich. That's really what we're starting to see. So we've come up with some things like, we launched Hot Mots a few weeks back that really took off. We launched, yeah, that thing was killer. We launched a program with Amazon actually for Fallout that was sort of reflecting the tone of the brand through a partnership.
Yeah.
When we find other ways for people to express it for us. So what it actually shows up in the world is people trying the 7 levels of Dave's on Hot Mots. It shows up with people talking about this crazy kit that we gave them for Fallout where they inject the sauce that they're obsessed with in their food. It's us providing excuses for people to talk about us, basically, without us having to say a whole lot in the process. And it's really working. It's really working. Q4 was tough for a lot of brands. 26 is looking great for us. And I think we're just reestablishing what we are. We are that brand that sort of people love, and we just don't take ourselves too seriously. And at the end of the day, they reflect that back to us, and we just put it on a big stage. So their love for the brand goes on the big stages.
So, Brandon, that brings up a question. So, a lot of brands try to be funny, right? But they end up maybe in the zone of cringe. What's your internal filter for this works and this is going to backfire?
Yeah, well, I think the main thing is we don't pay a whole lot of attention to trends. Like, we don't pay attention to the TikTok dance or whatever the thing that's out there. We'll do them once in a while, but it's not our thing.
Yeah.
It's more about, like, what do our customers say? What do our customers repeat? If we see a trend among the people who care about Dave's, then we might get into that boat. Even take, Mott's as we launched. Other people have mozzarella sticks, they have mozzarella planks. That's a common product that is in the world. But when we saw people actually, like, talking about it in our terms and saying they want to try it this way, that caught our attention. So all of a sudden, you want it? Here you go. Let's give it a shot. We tested really well, launched it. It went crazy. We sold out in like a week, 10 days. A product we had enough for 8 weeks, and it sold out in a week and a half. It was crazy.
Is there a record distance on a cheese pull?
Yeah, it's a big thing, man. It's a big thing. And we didn't even prompt that to people. They just do it. That's what it is, right? You just see, what do people, this for Dave's anyways. Not every brand is like that.
Right.
But for Dave's, it's like, what do people do? We've got millions of followers across social, more per restaurant than I think any other brand. And we just look at, how do people connect with this brand? What are they doing with this product? What do they want from this product? And then we find a way to distill it, test it. If it works well, scale it. And it's just murdering it, man. It's doing awesome.
So I wanted to ask you while we had you on about the part of the Hot Moz promo that didn't get into with Leon when we were talking to him at Mertech, and that is from the user generated content side. What did you plan around that, and what just happened that you kind of found unexpected resulting from that?
Yeah, I mean, we didn't plan much, frankly. We just reached out to folks and said, try it. And that was really it. And that's kind of the Dave's way. And I don't think a lot of brands can do that. I think a lot of brands aren't in a position that they pay as close attention to their followings, that they kind of know what they're going to do if you just suggest they try the thing. So, we basically sent a bunch of influencers that are very connected to us, love the brand, and a bunch of people just in general, not necessarily even influencers. Hey, this thing's coming out. If you want to try it, give it a shot. It'll be in your store at this day. And they went and did exactly what we hoped they'd do. because again, we pay attention. The reason we launched the product was we knew it had that social component to it where people would take a bite and just pull the thing. We saw it at Chili's, we saw it at other brands, we saw it when people tried it in our test market. So it's one of these amazing brands that it's going to sound strange, but we don't have to try that hard. All we really have to do is listen and make some choices that we test. And if those tests play well, it sort of is a snowball that sort of takes off on its own. There's thought and planning to it, obviously, and you can't launch new stuff or new activations every week. But yeah, we don't have to really tell people what to do. They just sort of do the thing that we saw was in the zeitgeist that people were doing when we ran the test, and it worked.
So how do you tie that the brand voice and social presence back to actual revenue? Like, what are you measuring that most marketers might ignore?
Yeah, well, I'm going to give you examples. We have not run a single ad for Hot Mods so far. We haven't
Love
paid
that.
anything to get attention for it, and it's sold out in 10 days.
Right.
So we've got a marketing budget. Obviously, we've got a media budget. We do spend media dollars, tens of millions of dollars a year, but we're really focusing our calendar and our messaging on what are the things that can organically get enough attention that it'll do well. And then when that starts to fade, because it will always start to fade, then we bring in media to start boosting that thing. That saves a lot of money, but it also extends the time
In that
that you actually
flywheel,
have
what you call it,
impact.
right?
Exactly. So if I can directly correlate, media spend, marketing executions to outcomes, that's what franchisees want. That's it. They want to know your dollars, my dollars that I hand you, Brandon, to invest are actually going to make my business momentum, positive, my traffic positive. So yeah, it's really about timing and understanding when do you need to pull that lever that actually creates that next wave of traffic for the brand.
So, Brandon, you guys already have a lot of locations and you're adding locations at a very rapid clip. So, you leading marketing, how do you have to allocate your time, the hats you wear to like all the current business, all the current locations, and the new growth?
Yeah, so we opened, I think, 4 locations last week. We generally are opening in the United States 2 or 3 a week, overseas 1 or 2 a week. We're getting rid of in a few weeks. We're open in Ireland. We have several locations in England. So we're opening really quickly for a brand, especially with 400 locations. It's not like we're thousands and thousands, and adding 10 is not a big deal for us. Every location's meaningful. We have a pretty well constructed and validated new store opening plan that works really well. So I don't have to do a whole lot. My team doesn't have to do a ton to support that. We just have to kind of continually monitor it to make sure it's still doing the things we hoped it would do. So the majority of our time is actually spent ensuring that our same store sales as a system stay positive, because I think that's the really risky territory. You get to that 200 to 300 location mark, and a lot of brands just hit a wall. They stop growing, and it really doesn't stop until you break like 1,000. It's that weird adolescent stage that I've seen where people are a couple hundred to 1,000 is a really tough road where either you're going to keep growing or you're going to stall out, and we don't want to stall out. So for us, it's actually more about ensuring the current franchisees in the system, the current restaurants that are open, stay successful. They're making money, because you need them to keep opening restaurants, so they're willing to open that third, fourth, fifth in the market rather than stay at 2 and be like, oh, I'm printing money, I'm good. We want them to keep growing, and their net revenue keeps going up, and they're happy with the trajectory of the brand. So most of my team's time is spent on supporting the current restaurants, and then just monitoring the playbook for new store openings to make sure it stays strong.
About that, you worked in some legacy brands, a big legacy brand, and you're in a hyper growth brand now. What's at risk of breaking when you try to scale a distinct brand voice?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you have an established brand, obviously people have clear expectations, especially if you open a new location, everybody knows what a Wendy's is. When the new one opens up, I mean, we did change the positioning of the brand a bit, or I would say just reestablish that position, but people's expectations are pretty set. For Dave's, in a lot of markets, we have 1 or 2 locations, and it's 30, 40 minutes from you or more, and you've maybe been there once or never. So I do think there's a larger burden on you to ensure that you stay consistent and you stay clear, and you don't do things like make your menu crazy and hard to understand, make the experience difficult to understand, make the experience inconsistent. I mean, that's important for every brand, but the truth is, when you have a ton of locations, and McDonald's opens a new location, they carry all the LTOs. Why wouldn't they? Wendy's does the same thing. For us, we keep it really simple at first. We don't even open third-party delivery for the first couple of weeks because
Keep
we
control.
Yeah, we want to keep control. We want to make sure that our franchisees understand how to run the restaurant, they're staffed properly, they get how to make things right. So I do think the burden is on us to basically be a little more straightforward and simple out the gate. I think the brands that expand beyond their territory, and I'm not going to pick on anybody here necessarily, but we all know those brands, they get outside their territory and they just assume that you just open it and it'll work. We build it and they will come, and they find they struggle a lot. And I think it's because they treat, the restaurant that was in Chicago that was very successful exactly the way the restaurant they built in Miami is, or Cincinnati, or whatever that town is. So I think you just have to start with what worked when you first opened in those new locations and make sure you get that new experience for people so they connect with the brand and fall in love before you start making things more complicated. We don't stress some of the things that I think a lot of brands stress. We try to just keep it really simple. Come in, try a slider. If you like it, come back. And most people do because it's really good food.
A friend of ours was telling us an anecdote. Actually, I'll say it. Rev was talking to us the other day. His son, who I believe is 9 years old, Jack, had declared that he was ready for the hottest of the hot at Dave's, the ghost pepper, right? And Rev called up Jim Biddix, your mucky muck over there, told him that of his son's intentions, and Jim kindly enough sent over a gift card. And yeah, he went hot first just to try it. He said not a problem. He smashed it, and then he came back to the ghost, and it was. He didn't go to school the next day.
Favor for Reaper. It's a serious,
Oh,
serious
Reaper, yeah,
thing.
that goes, yeah.
My oldest son actually is Jack. He's 20, but my oldest son had Reaper and cried. And it was a moment of like, told you, dude, this is a whole nother level. This is not something people order every day. This is for the brave in that moment that you don't need to take a flight for the rest of the day. You don't need to go to work the rest of the day. Just,
Yeah.
you're going to call it off after
Well,
this point.
over your right shoulder, you got a Packy's hot chip behind you,
Oh, yeah.
too. So you have some familiarity. Did you eat that thing?
I did. So when I was CMO of Papa John's, they were doing that campaign. And as one of the kind of moments, I stood up with the CEO on a stage in front of all our employees, and we both ate one of the chips. And it was a regretful experience, I will say.
I'm not going to ask you about the day after. It's just unfathomable. Yeah, my
It
son
was
did it too.
rough.
He could go to school the next day. Let's just say that.
It's
I'm glad
rough.
you brought that story up, Beck, because I wanted to ask about the spice levels. So it's like,
Yeah.
so how do the spice levels and the guest experience around that and the conversation, and in case of what Beck described with that story, the lore around spice, especially the upper end of the scale, play in marketing land? Like, how do you think about using that, harnessing that to positively impact the brand?
Yeah, so I mean, we have a thing we call the Reaper Challenge, where it's basically you try every spice level, and most people stop about 3/4 of the way up the ladder, and they're like, "Okay, I'm throwing in the towel." It's funny because the brand isn't really built around that high spice level. We don't sell a lot of the really high spice
Those are
level stuff.
outliers.
Yeah, they are. It's the last 2 or 3 levels are really for those brave souls who just want to have a moment, with their friends, or just reflect on life and maybe go into a bit of a euphoric state after they pass out or whatever it is.
Your life vision.
But they're there because it is hot chicken, and because our founders, Armin, Dave, and Gary, and really Dave, who's the chef, and this guy's a legit Michelin trained chef, he finds value in like the range of like, it's okay to have a spicy thing. That's okay. In moderation, when you can handle it, it's okay to have that spicy things. We do play with it in that Reaper challenge kind of idea. In fact, most of the content that originally kicked the brand off back in the early days was really connected to that, the idea of going crazy on spice.
Mm-hmm.
But again, the reason the range is there is it's just a really good chicken sandwich. Frankly, I would argue out punches every fast food and every fast casual chicken sandwich by a mile, because it's
Those
really
tenders
good
are
halal chicken.
massive.
They are. It's huge. I mean, we call it a slider, but there's no way you can describe it as a slider compared to most people's sliders. And most people go right in the middle or at the bottom end of the scale. Even the not hot product, which has no spice on it, isn't bad. But I mean, my 6-year-old right there, he'll eat a mild one and he'll be in love. He loves it. My 20-year-old will cry at the Reaper. That's just what it is, right? We're there for, you want to try it however you want to try it. You can kind of get into hot chicken however you want. And the experience, I think, is very different at Dave's compared to at least what most people do, because generally it's not sauce, it's just spices on there. So it's about the Dave sauce and the slaw on it, and it's really straightforward. But if you've had a chicken sandwich at a fast food place, you've never had something like this. You got to give it a shot and try the spice level that works for you. But don't get too brave your first go, because you don't want to miss the rest of your day.
Jed?
Well, now I want to ask you about innovation. I mean, we tend to talk a little bit about technology here, but just even broadly, innovation in marketing. How do you think about that, and what are you bringing in your role?
Well, the way I look at innovation is it starts with what works for the brand because every brand's different, right? You got Taco Bell cranking out 30, 40 LTOs, actual product innovation every quarter. You got brands like McDonald's do the occasional LTO, even they do run a decent amount of them, occasional LTO, but then they do a lot of innovation around activations. So they're doing the K-pop thing, I think this week, as an example. They did the Grinch thing where their highest sales day ever was based on socks, is what I read for their Grinch activation. So to me, it does start with, well, what does the brand actually need? If I'm at In-N-Out, I'm not doing a lot of innovation. That's just not my brand, right? If I'm at Dave's, you got to go back and look at what do your customers want. Again, reflect what they want back to you for this brand. That's really our core tenet. And what are those moments that let them try things like spice levels that might get them out of their comfort zone? Let them try things like sides that might complement that, chicken sandwich, that slider really well. So what we found as we did our homework was we do need a little bit of news to keep kind of people coming back and trying it often, but also just connected to the brand and interested in playing with the menu because our menu is very simple. Our menu is tenders and sliders. That's pretty much it. You can get bites now, which are just chopped up kind of things, but the menu is ridiculously simple at a Dave's. We want to keep it that way. So what we're doing is we're bringing in every now and then something like Mott's that just lets you try the brand in a little different way. It's still about the spices. It's still about these are things that are made for us. We're not buying them from Walmart and throwing them in the store kind of thing. They're specifically built to our spec. So on the product side, it's really about getting people to sort of explore Dave's in different ways. It's not just about we're going to try something because we think it's interesting. We're going to try it because it lets you grow into Dave's as a brand. On the activation side, it's really about serving the niches that are out there that are the kind of people that would like Dave's. So, we're not going to go do something with a giant film that's ubiquitous to everyone. We're going to do something with Fallout. We're going to do something with Marvel characters. We're going to do something with something that's got a little niche to it. We wouldn't do like a Marvel film, but we might do a cartoon. It's about like, where's that niche play that are Dave's kind of people and that people get obsessed over. Our kind of slogan is blow their minds. That's what's up on the wall in one of our big conference rooms. That was the initial article written about Dave's when it was still in a parking lot. It was blow their minds. So we want to find those niches and those moments that somebody's like, damn, only Dave's could have done that sort of thing. I'm not sure many brands would do a syringe for sauce as a stim pack for Fallout kind of thing. We'd rather find our niche and explore that.
Is that promo over? I want one of those syringes now. I have a whole Fallout section in my office here.
Yeah, it's sold out in 4 days, man.
Oh my
So
God.
yeah, it was a hot thing. It was a really hot thing. But again, most brands wouldn't do that sort of thing. So we're trying to lean into what are we reflecting back that our customers really think is cool, and that was the kind of thing that our customers really not only loved but grew the business. So again, it's based on what do we want the brand to be, what actually grows traffic, what gets franchisees excited about this brand, and those are the sort of things that are working right now.
So I'm going to add on to that on the innovation side of things. We ran into Leon twice, right? We just saw him at Mertech, and before that we saw him at Coco Robotics. And Coco was kind of a surprise for us. At least I didn't know, Chad, I don't know if you knew going into that, how closely tied advertising is with that, because it's a little mobile billboard. I love the idea that they wrapped it with Venom and Tom Hardy's voice and get your food before I eat it when it opens up, right? How do you feel about that mode of advertising? Is it something that's more meant for the big movie houses that can do it because it's a shared service? Or is that something that Dave's would look at saying, we want a fleet of these things out there that are, what's the name of your mascot, by the way? I just think it is the Squeaky Chicken.
Dave. Yeah, Dave.
Yeah, so is that something you see Dave on roaming around the neighborhoods? And when it opens, it goes or something like.
It could. Yeah, I think it's just gotta feel like it's not a standard fast food, standard super commercial. Everybody could do this. If there's an execution that you could pull that chicken off of, and be like, it could be, again, not knocking McDonald's, they're doing great, but if it could have a McDonald's logo on it, it's probably not for us. That's just not what we are. So it's got to feel unique. Like yeah, exactly. So if that robot came and it made a noise at you or had some connection to an integration or an activation, that could work potentially. But again, it just can't feel like everybody else. We don't want our stuff to. We don't do a lot of the things that a lot of the restaurants brands do consciously. We say, if this would happen at a fast food joint, would we do it? And there are exceptions, obviously, but generally we want We want to kind of ride our.
Before we move off the subject, with one last one, Chad, this is just exciting. So, knowing that you are a history of it as a bit of a contrarian by merit of how you do things, what's your current contrarian take on brand building that most CMOs would just flat out disagree with?
I think the big thing that I probably run into the most friction with as a CMO is almost every media department and most marketing departments are obsessed with efficiency. And I think that is ridiculous. I think no one pays attention to the thing that is cheap for a CPM's sake or is cheap because AI generated it so we don't have to go make the thing. I think efficiency often comes at the expense of it. That doesn't mean you can't be efficient. So I'm not saying we go crazy and spend $10,000 on something that should cost us $5. It's not what I'm saying at all. But I would rather run a Fallout program that's wildly successful for 4 or 5 days than run a program that lasts 6 months and we're sitting on inventory at the end of it because we got a low cost per unit from the boat in China when we had this stuff shipped over.
And the gag wore itself out months ago.
Right. Efficiency, I think, often kills marketing because you're so focused on just reach and CPMs and efficiency per unit. You have to be efficient enough to have a profitable business. That's not a question. And that might be a boring answer, but at the end of the day, I can't stand talking about. I mean, the first thing I said at the franchise conference when they introduced me in November was, "You're never going to hear me talk about, impression counts. I don't care if something gets 1 billion impressions. I do not care because that means nothing to your business. I care about traffic that shows up. And at the end of the day, are we making money? That's all that matters. So it's about impact, not efficiency."
Love it. Chad.
So, Beck, you brought up the example of Coco, but I want to generalize this, right? So, as technology starts to move faster, shows up in more places, including places that touch the guest experience, what's marketing's seat at the table at Dave's, in not just determining that the tech works, but how the tech works?
Yeah, I mean, we need to keep Dave simple. We need to keep it straightforward. I don't know if you've walked into a restaurant where it feels like you can't interact with a person. I don't know if you've walked into a restaurant where you feel like this takes 3 times longer than it should because they're making me do something I don't want to do, or I didn't choose to do. Our mobile app right now frustrates me. We need to fix it because it's too much work. Like you don't go to a place like Dave's and it shouldn't become a chore. It should be simple. It should be straightforward. It should reinforce that uniqueness of the brand. So really where marketing comes in is we want to ensure that happens when as much as is humanly possible at every touch point. I think it helps ops too, because at the end of the day, they're not having to script 15 things they have to say to someone when they walk up. That drives me nuts when someone gives you a 3-minute speech before you can place your order. But really, at the end of the day, it's enforcing that simplicity and that experience that you should walk out of a Days with a smile on your face. And it's because of the food, but it's because of the experience too. We spend tens of thousands of dollars to make every restaurant look interesting and to train properly and spend a lot more than most people on food costs because we want to make sure the product is killer. You don't want to ruin all that because you had some experience with a kiosk that took you 10 minutes to figure out. It's got to be simple. And that's the biggest thing we're trying to stress is keep it simple, keep the experience clean for the guest. And it's not perfect right now. We got work to do, but I feel like our experience beats most brands that are in our space.
You mentioned In-N-Out earlier. Now, they're by no means a boring brand, but I'd say they're pretty set in their ways, right? And so if you joined a risk-averse brand, maybe like an In-N-Out or somebody that's kind of set in their ways, what's the first move you'd make to inject personality without blowing it up? That just seems hard to do.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it depends on the brand. In-N-Out, I think, does have a personality, but the personality is more lore,
Yes.
legend. It's a little more
Just
if
community.
you grew up, especially
Yeah.
yeah, especially if you grew up on the West Coast, right? If I'm a Midwesterner, so for me it's a little different experience. But if you grew up in California, don't mess with my In-N-Out is kind of the philosophy
Exactly.
there.
But what if
So I think
it's not getting the same results that it did before?
Yeah, I think at that point you have to figure out, well, what elements of that could be scaled in some capacity. What elements of that can I think Chick-fil-A does a really good job of that as an example.
Yeah.
Chick-fil-A does a really good job of bringing that service personality, the politeness, the respectfulness, the idea that we're here to serve you and make this experience good. They convey that externally really well. The fact that I get an email from the store manager of the Chick-fil-A directly, yeah, but whatever, for that person's name on it saying, you should come in this week for this sort of thing. Most brands don't do that. So I think it all depends on the brand and how do you reflect the personality of that brand. So I do think an In-N-Out, for example, if they wanted to, and I'm not telling In-N-Out what to do because they know what they're doing, but if they wanted to, they could reflect that California local community personality on bigger stages pretty easily. I think Culver's does a pretty good job of that as an example. So there are brands that have that sense, and it comes through in their executions. There's brands that feel random and confusing, and I think that's part of the reason they don't grow. So just defining who you are, like if your brand is, we reflect the voice of our customers, which is really what Dave's does with sort of this quirk and goofiness of Dave. You just have to be true to that at every moment. And you have to ask yourself, that's the filter you run everything through. Should we do this thing or not? And if the answer is, well, it sounds like we're going to be saying we're funny rather than telling a joke, we shouldn't do it.
Right. Gotta be on brand.
That's right. Every time. Every time. That's the job to me, primarily the CMO, but frankly the entire marketing team. Just ensure that you're actually doing the things that reflect who you want to be, what you want to be famous for as a brand.
Brandon, what's changing in the way consumer attention is commanded that you're watching like a hawk and you're ready to change approaches and strategies to take advantage of?
I think frequency of news has changed dramatically. You go back 3 or 4 years even, and a brand could do something that gets attention every quarter and be fine and get, enough momentum with that thing they did. And I really think Taco Bell is the one that's driven this for people. Taco Bell has news every week. Crumble Cookie, which, they're on a little bit of a decline right now, but news every week, right? It's the frequency of news has shifted. So the temptation there is we're going to run 50 LTOs this year. And if you don't have the system that Taco Bell has to execute that, you will do that very poorly and it will bite you. It just won't work. But I do think that is the big change. I fought at Wendy's, for example. We were doing, 15 LTOs a year and I pulled it back to like 4. And at the time, that was perfect. That was the exact right amount to get the momentum we needed to see traffic grow, all that stuff. I don't know if you can pull that off today. So that's why you got to bring in other things. It's not just about product. You have to find other excuses to create a little bit of attention and a little bit of news because the competition's nuts. I mean, you decide you're going to lunch or dinner or wherever, you got 1,000 choices. So if you don't stay top of mind, you're not going to be chosen as often as you could be, and that's going to show up in your traffic, and that's a slippery slope. So I think the frequency of news, and maybe that's Taco Bell, maybe that's TikTok, maybe that's short form video. I don't know what it is, but the frequency of news has definitely shifted for most brands.
I my mind drifts in a bunch of places. I've been fixating on the books behind you, right? You got Gino Wickman, you got Duckworth back there, you got Cynic. I think I see at least 4 or 5 books from Cynic, 4 of them being Start With Why. I guess you must have handed them out at some point, or Simon did
I do.
Big fans of his. And so my question is really around the Start With Why thing and being a CMO. And you just mentioned earlier about your team. Tell me a little bit about your leadership style and how you run things there, or how you collaborate. And it sounds like you do it from a basis of your why. But let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really important that everyone understands both the positioning of the brand and what works.
Yeah.
So doing most marketing, I think, happens by gut. And I think you have to train your gut though. And if you don't train your gut, so you understand what actually moves the business and what people will respond to externally for your brand, you're in a really bad position because you have no filter to judge ideas. You can sit in a room and brainstorm and come up with 25, 30, 50 cool things. But your job as a brand builder is to orient the ideas around what builds the brand and moves the business. That's it. End of story. The reason I hand out things like Start With Why is I want us to be very firm on who we are. And that develops over time, so it evolves. But I want us to be very firm on who we are. How do we come to market? How do we express ourselves? I also do things like we have a monthly session we call Excellent Ads. It's looking at just awesome work across the world. Any piece of creative, any piece of media buying, anything that was really cool. Like I'm sure we're going to do a session on the K-pop Demon Hunters thing that McDonald's is getting ready to do as an example. I think I brought that up before, where we analyze that stuff and say what worked, what didn't, was it on brand? Did it build the brand? Did it result in traffic growth? So I think building the palette of your team is really, really important. Hire great people that have great instincts and are smart and are cool because you don't hang out with jerks. But I think the magic becomes when they can discern, when they can actually say, yeah, that's something that fits the brand. Yeah, that's something that's going to grow the business, and they can back that up. Because it's really hard to pitch a board, a franchise community, your executive team, whatever, on an idea unless they trust that you understand what builds the brand, what drives the business. So to me, that's the critical component, is finding people who are capable of getting there and then working with them until they get there. That's why I spend the first few months doing homework, because I don't know for the brand what'll work. I have just the external view. I don't see the numbers, the internal numbers, until I spend some time so I can start building that discernment.
Well, it probably also builds credibility to the team that you spending time understanding before passing judgment, or like, this guy doesn't know. Well, they've seen you doing the work and inquiring. That probably opens doors for you as well with a team you just took on.
Yeah, totally. Because then you can back it up with real facts. You can say this worked here, this didn't work here. Look at the correlations. Look, when you guys were in this thing, it was great. When you're in this thing, it didn't look like it did much. Why do we think it didn't do much? Was it off brand? Was it not something that connected? I want everybody on my team to get to the point, and usually it takes me about 6 months, 9 months to get there on a brand. It usually takes the whole team to be, maybe a year and a half, 2 years to be there, because you have some folks that, take a little longer. There's things a little more niche, where you get to the point where you don't have to be in the room. Anybody can discern, this is something that I know what's worked, and this will work. And I know what's on brand, and this is on brand. That's the magic moment. That's when that person's ready to go on to a different company or grow in your company or whatever, and do great things, I think.
Nice. Chad? I think we got one more before rapid fire. Yeah.
Yeah. So Brandon, for a junior marketer, someone who doesn't have your degree of experience, they're at some other brand. What's like a general resource or a general mantra you'd advise them, wherever they happen to be, to take the right
Yeah.
kind of steps in the right direction, get closer to what you're doing?
Yeah, number one is always do your homework. Do your homework. And that's hard to do because it's not so fun compared to coming up with ideas and doing stunts and getting on stages and stuff like that, even though I'm not into getting on stages myself, but I think you do have to do your homework so you can support what you think you're going to. One, you're going to jump your odds of success dramatically on everything you execute. And two, you can actually tell the story of why you're doing something, why it deserves budget, why it deserves a spot on the calendar, why it deserves to actually be talked about in this broader group. And if you do your homework enough and you hit a few base runs, that gives you permission to, go for the fences a few times. And as soon as something crosses the fence once or twice, then you got them. Then all of a sudden everybody's going to trust you. You can't break that trust because you got to constantly do the homework. So you got to keep evaluating what's working, what's not, what's still on brand. Is this brand still in the right spot? Is it executing the right way? But the biggest thing I repeat a lot is do your homework, which doesn't sound nearly as inspiring as I wish it would, but it's the truth. That's what gets you to the point where you can be successful consistently, I found.
Sounds like the opposite of that thing you hear from time to time, which is better to be lucky than good. I think it's what you're hearing saying is it's better to be good than lucky.
You know what? I think people who are lucky do their homework, usually. That's really what it boils down to. Once in a while, you get a flyer. That's true.
Yeah.
But by and large, if you do your homework, your hit rate just goes so much higher.
Repeated luck isn't luck.
No, it's not. It's not. Eventually you refine your gut. So even when people say, well, I feel it in my gut, well, if your gut's refined enough, that's true.
Yeah.
But until you've gotten to the point where your instincts are honed, then you just won't know. You won't know.
That's why the same people are always at the same tables in the World Series of Poker. They're not just lucky people.
Yep.
It doesn't work.
That is the truth.
Yeah.
That is the truth. They did their homework, I would argue. They put in the hours. So you got to do.
Yeah, right there with you. All right, you ready for some rapid fire?
Let's do it.
All right, I feel like I should have air horns. But anyways, by the way, we will be playing Don't Fear the Reaper on your outro music here. It's just going to be
hey, all right. I'll take it.
All right, here we go. Rapid fire round, starting with number one. Who's building a brand right now the marketers should be studying? It doesn't have to be food.
Well, food, I would say Taco Bell. Taco Bell is doing an amazing job right now building a brand that people are paying attention to. They figured out their niche. They've grown consistently for years at this point, and it's really hard to do in the space they're playing, especially at the price point they're playing in.
Don't they have 8 ingredients?
Chili's is, yeah, there's a bunch of, yeah. There's a bunch, and it's very simple, right? They just remix the same stuff pretty much. So I look to Taco Bell as a brand that's doing a really good job. I'm going to stay mostly in food because that's where I live. So.
Okay. Most overrated marketing advice.
I think it is trust your gut. I really think it is. You got to do your homework first. Your gut is refined by the homework.
Yeah. It also, the thing we learned is I always thought marketers were these creatives that are drawing and doodling all the time. And actually, there are a lot of data geeks. It's the creative that comes later once you know the data.
That's right.
one thing brands do on social that instantly tells you they just don't get it.
I think it's following all the trends. I really do. I think I'd rather be a trendsetter than a trend follower. So just because you see people doing it on social, if it's not directly connected to your brand and relevant to your brand, stay away from it. It's not worth. It's not cringe.
If Dave's Hot Chicken had a Wendy style rival to roast, who would it be?
Good question. I think the direct competitors, and this is going to be a bit of a long one, sorry. The direct competitors to Dave's um, are folks like Raising Cane's and Chick-fil-A, and it's not the fast food chicken sandwich. It's just such a different experience. And frankly, those guys are doing pretty good. So we have no reason to roast anyone right now. They're a different thing, right? It's a different experience. It's a whole different product category, I would argue, but that's where people are making choices through. So I guess we pick on somebody else that's kind of in a niche, and I can't really tell you who that is, but it would be somebody else in the niche, like a hot
We're
chicken
gonna
niche
keep
or
an eye
whatever.
out
But we're
for
not
it.
doing that anytime soon.
All
That's
right,
not
no
our
worries.
brand.
I
Not
don't
our
worry. I
brand.
like the high road too. What's harder, being funny or being consistent?
Consistent, no question. You can hire funny. It's really hard to hire consistent. So consistent's really hard.
What's one thing you stop doing immediately if you took over most marketing teams?
Worrying about CPMs, worrying about pure efficiency plays. I do not care how cheap your TV ads are or your CTV or your social. I don't care. I care if it works.
All right, last question. One brand you'd love to take over for 90 days just to shake things up.
I would have said about 2 years ago McDonald's, but they're doing really good right now. So McDonald's is one that I would have said. Now, I could take another swing at Wendy's just because they've hit a little rough patch over the last couple of years. We got 12 years of traffic growth out of the work the teams did, and it started to slow down a little bit. So probably Wendy's again, but I've been there, so I wouldn't do it. But that's one that's interesting.
All right, love it. Well, that's been our rapid fire session. Not too painful. I loved your answers. Dude, you're awesome. I love that when I dangled the carrot to say something, to talk some smack, you took the high road, even though you are the Wendy's troll. I just, there's so much good in you, dude. From how you helped us out when we started out to what you're doing over at Dave's and the way you think about things. I love that you're helping people not chase the moon. You can't get to the moon if you chase. You have to go in front of it and intersect its orbit to be able to land on the thing. And I love the way you look at things. It's absolutely awesome, man. Where are you going to be next? Like, if somebody wants to see you, talk to you, do you have a book coming out? What's going on with Brandon?
No book. I've got 3 kids, so I'm pretty busy. So there's not a lot of time for book writing. Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be keep working on Dave's for the next few months, and then I'm going to start probably getting out on the circuit a little bit to some of the restaurant shows. But my first 6 or 8 months at a brand, I focus my attention on figuring out what works, getting to know the franchisees, getting to know the brand, getting to know the players. So I'm going to be in a couple more months heads down before I get out into the world. But you can find me on LinkedIn, find me, in places like that for now.
Fantastic. Well, Brandon, this has been a real joy. Chad, anything before we wrap up?
I will try the Reaper. That's what I'm going to
You
say.
should. You should just block your calendar along
commitment.
like Labor Day weekend or Memorial Day weekend. That's a good one. Just to give yourself a couple days. Again, don't book any flights within 24 hours. That's the trick.
Lord. You don't have asthma, right? According to Rev, it can flare your asthma if you have it because the Reaper's so strong.
All good.
Okay. All right.
It'll hurt me, but
I will document that. You can come by and drool, and I will film it. It'll be amazing. Or we'll just do stupid stepbrother thing and next to each other, just go, it tastes like burning.
Actually, I'm gonna see if I can get it without signing the waiver.
I don't know. Well, everybody, this has been Brandon Rhoten with Dave's Hot Chicken, formerly of some really great brands as well. The guy has a history that if you're not taking notes, you should dip into the work he's done. Really just an impressive career track, and I love what you're doing with the brand that we love on too. So we're excited to see where you take this thing next. It's super exciting. Absolutely. But
thanks,
for now,
guys. A lot of fun.
Always. For everybody, last thing is always random acts of kindness. Sprinkle that stuff everywhere. Just like Brandon spent time with us today and made our day better. You never know whose day you're going to make better just by a small gesture, opening a door, or a kind word, or a moment of forgiveness when you're like, you want to yell at them. But for now, this is Injecting GTM and ChatGTM podcast signing off. We'll see you guys next time.